It began not with suspicion or betrayal, but with laughter, the kind that slips out before you know what it means. Rosa, the housekeeper, stood alone in the Beckford kitchen, wiping down a marble counter that gleamed even at dusk. She was humming, lost in routine, when the voice broke through the silence. Crisp, feminine, unmistakably intimate. "Harder, Marco," said the voice, not whispered, not shy, but playful and laced with desire. Rosa froze, the dishcloth suspended in midair. She turned toward the wrought iron birdcage by the kitchen window. There, perched regally with iridescent feathers and a tilted head, was Mango, the Beckford's blue and yellow macaw. The parrot blinked at her and fluffed his feathers proudly, as if he had performed a rehearsed line from a play. She laughed, not because it was funny, but because she didn't know what else to do. In that moment, the absurdity of a bird speaking like a sultry actress in a late-night drama was enough to crack a nervous giggle. But even as her laughter echoed, something coiled inside her, a slow, creeping unease. The Beckford estate was nestled in the hush of suburban wealth, surrounded by manicured lawns and privacy hedges taller than most men. Its security system was state-of-the-art, designed to keep out the world and preserve the illusion of control. But inside, among all the locks and cameras and silent alarms, lived a creature that noticed everything. Mango was not just a bird. He was Lydia Beckford's confidant, her constant companion through long, lonely stretches of marriage. Lydia, with her effortless beauty and voice like velvet soaked in wine, often sat by Mango's cage for hours. She sang to him in French. She read poetry aloud. She whispered secrets while sipping Chardonnay in the afternoon sun. Mango, ever the attentive student, soaked it all in: words, cadence, emotion. Lydia's husband, Henry Beckford, was rarely home, a man whose handshake had closed million-dollar deals across 5 continents. Henry had built his empire on absence. His homecomings were events, scheduled like quarterly reports. And Lydia, she had grown used to absence. Too, she dressed for herself, she dined alone, she laughed into her wineglass when no one was watching. The next morning, Rosa found herself lingering near the parrot's cage. Part of her wanted to hear it again. Maybe she'd misheard, maybe Mango had learned the phrase from television. But Mango didn't repeat himself, at least not right away. Instead, he clicked his beak rhythmically, paced the perch, then looked her in the eye and said, "You like that?" This time, Rosa didn't laugh. Her stomach tightened. The words didn't sound like TV. They didn't sound like Lydia reading poetry. They sounded like something overheard. Something private. Something raw. That night, lying in her small room off the service hallway, Rosa barely slept. She kept hearing the parrot's voice, too familiar, too knowing. The following day, as she folded laundry in the linen room, Mango added a third phrase. Whispered, delicate, "Don't stop, baby." Rosa's hands froze. The warmth of fresh towels did nothing to stop the chill creeping down her spine. She wasn't a nosy woman. She minded her place. But something about those words, layered in real breath, real passion, told her they hadn't come from a screen. She dialed Thomas Keller. Thomas, estate manager and longtime friend of the Beckfords, was the kind of man who kept everything in order: accounts, landscaping, even the comings and goings of visiting relatives. He was not easily rattled. When Rosa asked him to come in person, he arrived the next morning, dressed in gray slacks and a tie too formal for a Thursday. "You're telling me the parrot heard something?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'm telling you it didn't learn those words from TV," Rosa replied, with Lydia out shopping and Mango serenading the garden with a medley of Sinatra. Thomas installed 2 discreet cameras, one aimed at the hallway outside the master bedroom, the other nestled in a bouquet vase overlooking the living room. Both were equipped with motion sensors and audio recording. They would only activate when the house was quiet, after midnight. Later that evening, Lydia returned. She was radiant, wrapped in a silk dress that shimmered like dusk. A small bag from a designer boutique dangled from her wrist. She passed Mango, who chirped, "Bonsoir, Ma Belle." She laughed, kissed him on the beak, and disappeared down the hall. At 2:17 a.m., the hallway camera stirred. Mango rustled in his cage. Lydia's bedroom door remained closed. But something about the stillness felt wrong. In the dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of the moon through the window, Mango raised one claw, shifted his feathers, and spoke. "You're not supposed to be here, but I like it." The voice wasn't his. It was hers. Rosa, watching the live footage from a small screen tucked in the pantry, felt her pulse spike. Her mouth went dry. This wasn't an echo. It was a confession. And the bird was no longer just a pet. He was the memory of something forbidden. In his cage, Mango blinked slowly, as if he, too, understood the weight of the words he carried. And somewhere in the silence of that vast, luxurious home, the truth began to stretch its wings. Thomas spent the next morning in a peculiar state of tension, not overtly shaken, but carrying a stillness that weighed heavy behind his eyes. He had spent the previous night combing through hours of footage. But it was not the image that disturbed him. It was the sound, a soft thrum of forbidden intimacy that had no place in the quiet corridors of the Beckford estate. The first recording activated at 2:13 a.m. The frame showed nothing but the soft swaying of shadows on wallpaper, the hush of an air conditioner, the still cage where Mango slumbered with his head tucked beneath his wing. Then the audio came alive. A low male voice murmured something inaudible at first, followed by the unmistakable cadence of Lydia's laughter. And then, clear as a bell, came the words, "Lydia, you're crazy tonight." Thomas sat back in his chair, blood draining from his fingertips. The voice wasn't Henry's. It was lighter, less aged, more relaxed. It carried no trace of the clipped precision with which Mr. Beckford delivered every sentence. Even in private, this voice was familiar with Lydia, not through marriage, but through muscle memory. In the morning light, Rosa entered Thomas's office slowly, carrying a small notepad. She looked pale, as if she too had spent the night haunted by sounds without faces. "He said something new," she whispered. Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Mango, just now, while I was making tea." She unfolded the paper and read aloud, "You better not repeat what I said." Thomas sighed, then leaned forward, placing both elbows on the desk. "And did Lydia say that?" She laughed when she did, like it was a joke. But Mango doesn't laugh. No, Thomas thought. Mango remembers. Later that afternoon, Thomas isolated the audio clip and filtered out the static. With professional software, he overlaid the waveform of Mango's repetition with Lydia's original voice. The results were nearly identical. Intonation, pitch, rhythm. The Parrot had become an unintentional voice recorder, echoing everything that should have remained behind closed doors. And then came Marco. Thomas had started looking into Lydia's personal schedule, stored in the estate's cloud calendar. There he found entries labeled PT session, always mid-afternoon, 3 times a week. No further details, but gate logs showed the same car entering during those times, a silver BMW registered to one Marco Villarreal. Licensed personal trainer. Marco had no criminal record, no known associations with media or paparazzi. But his social media revealed a man too beautiful for discretion, shirtless selfies, vague inspirational captions, a feed littered with flattery from female clients. But the comments from Lydia had been deleted. Thomas felt a cold resolve begin to settle. That night, he downloaded all the audio and video files to a secure USB. It took nearly an hour to compile and encrypt everything. He labeled the folder simply, Mango. He stared at the drive for a long while, debating whether to send it. Henry Beckford was in Tokyo, unreachable due to the time difference and tightly packed business meetings. Would it be reckless to send such personal content across continents? Or was it cowardly to wait? Finally, Thomas placed the USB into a sealed envelope, addressed in his neatest handwriting. Then he paused. One more clip to review. He clicked on the final file. The screen remained black, just audio. Lydia's voice again, a bit breathless, playful. "You think he'll ever find out?" Marco's voice, this time tinged with smugness. "Eric doesn't know anything, yet." Thomas froze. Eric. Not Henry. He replayed the clip. Eric doesn't know anything, yet. Thomas blinked. Had Marco confused the names? Or was Eric the real name of Henry Beckford? Or worse, was Lydia doing this with more than one man? 1,000 questions flooded in, each more damning than the last, but none as potent as the realization he had been slow to reach. Mango hadn't merely repeated one conversation. He had echoed many, different tones, different phrases, different names. Thomas closed his laptop, placed it on the desk, and stared at the birdcage in the monitor's background. Mango sat still, his head tilted, eye gleaming like a bead of glass. Innocent, observant, deadly, the bird had become an archive of secrets. And secrets, Thomas knew, were only ever dangerous when someone listened. Thomas sealed the padded envelope with a deliberation that felt heavier than the act required. The USB inside, labeled only with a small red dot and the initials, MB, held more than evidence. It held confessions, missteps, and the erosion of trust made flesh in audio and video bites. He addressed it to a private email used only by Eric Beckford, the alias Henry employed when working overseas. Few knew this, fewer were allowed to use it, but Thomas had once helped install a secure server during a security overhaul. And he remembered. He composed the message with care, short, clinical, and devoid of opinion. Subject: Security Review, Private Audio Visuals. Body: Files attached include footage and audio recorded per standard surveillance protocols. Strongly advise private review. Please confirm receipt. He encrypted the message with a password that only Eric would recognize, the name of his late dog. Followed by the year of Lydia and Eric's marriage. Then he hit send. The reply never came, but 12 hours later, at 3:22 a.m., Thomas received an automatic alert from the estate's internal system. Remote login initiated. Tokyo IP. User, EB. Eric had seen the files. No response, no rage, no commands, just one text to Thomas's private phone: continue recording. Do not interfere. In the days that followed, Thomas kept to his task. Cameras remained hidden, mics still nestled in vase necks and lamp bases. Lydia floated through the house. Unaware, she smiled, she gardened, she drank her morning juice while Mango, perched in his usual spot, chirped innocently, but he no longer sang Sinatra. Now he repeated Lydia's secrets, like a child with no filter and no shame. Oh Marco, just like that, he squawked mid-morning, startling Rosa so badly she dropped a glass. By the third day, Thomas had gathered clips that no longer merely hinted, they testified. One in particular burned into his mind: Marco tiptoeing from Lydia's bedroom. Hair mussed, shirt half-buttoned, kissing his fingers toward the cage as Mango crowed. Yes, 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 Marco. It was surreal, theater written in feathers and glass. But what broke the dam was something far more human. Thomas, sleep-deprived and wired with unease, uploaded a snippet to a private folder on his cloud drive. A friend in his online poker group, a former audio engineer, had offered to clean up background distortion. Without thinking, Thomas dropped the clip into the group chat, marked, "Check this weird Parrot thing. Real voices. Not kidding." He meant to delete it an hour later. He forgot. By noon the next day, a new TikTok account had gone viral. Parrot Leaks uploaded a 23-second video titled, "The Parrot Who Knew Too Much." It showed Mango, vibrant and poised, repeating in perfect cadence, "Harder. Marco, you like that? Don't stop, baby." Then a jump cut to Marco emerging from a darkened hallway. The internet lost its mind. In 12 hours, the video garnered 8.4 million views. By sunrise the next day, #Parrot Challenge trended globally. Users mimicked Mango, dubbed scenes, turned the audio into remixes. One remix made it to Spotify. Another aired briefly on FM radio before being pulled. Comment sections exploded. "No way that bird just outed an affair. Mango deserves his own reality show. She trained the bird to expose her. This is Shakespearean." Even news outlets picked up the story. When Pets Know Too Much headlined one morning talk show segment. Mango became a meme, a GIF, a virtual pet in an app within 72 hours. Lydia hadn't seen the video yet, but Thomas did, and so did Eric. His plane landed the following afternoon. No announcement, no chauffeurs. He stepped off the gate alone, dressed in a black overcoat and leather gloves despite the California sun. He didn't go home. Instead, he checked into a discreet hotel under his real name. That night, 3 private investigators entered the Beckford estate posing as IT technicians. They carried briefcases, notepads, and silent faces. Thomas let them in. In the study, Mango tilted his head. Eric doesn't know anything, yet. The investigators said nothing. One of them took out a pen and wrote the phrase down in block letters. They weren't here for justice. They were here for precision. Eric had returned, not as a husband, but as a strategist, and the board was now set. It began with a ripple, barely noticeable, a whisper of laughter shared in corners of the internet. A short clip stitched together with irony and disbelief. But like all things in the digital age, it took only a spark to ignite an inferno. Within 24 hours, TikTok became the stage for a parody that swept across the globe. The original video was less than 30 seconds. Mango, perched with exaggerated elegance on his swing, delivered the damning phrase in perfect clarity, "Harder, Marco." The audio had been trimmed to capture just that line, followed by a dramatic zoom on the parrot's face, and then a cut to black with the caption, "The bird knows everything." The response was immediate. Influencers began mimicking the parrot's voice, lip-syncing its scandalous lines while dressed in bird costumes or seated in mock luxury mansions. Teenagers created dance challenges with voiceovers, their captions veering between dark humor and disbelief. Even comedians and voice actors jumped in, recreating elaborate parrot confessionals, exaggerating the drama with theatrical flair. Lydia Beckford, once known in affluent circles for her tasteful charity galas and designer fashion, was suddenly the internet's favorite joke. Memes began surfacing, her face Photoshop onto parrots, viral sounds remixed with club beats. "Harder, Marco" trended on Instagram Reels, then on YouTube Shorts, and eventually even on late-night comedy segments. She had become a symbol of unintentional comedy, her private life shredded and repackaged for mass amusement. Marco's name quickly surfaced. Internet sleuths dug into public court records, revealing a previous civil suit involving inappropriate conduct with a former client. While the case had been dismissed, the implications were enough. Fitness companies and lifestyle brands he had modeled for quietly removed his images. One gym revoked his promotional contract within hours. But perhaps the cruelest twist belonged to Lydia's charitable foundation. For years, she had served as the face of Hope for Harmony, a nonprofit supporting displaced animals. Sponsors, wary of scandal, pulled their funding. Press releases cited a need to reassess our affiliations amid ongoing media disruption. Meanwhile, Mango had transcended species and status. The parrot was invited, though not literally, to appear on a popular daytime talk show, where hosts replayed his audio clips to riotous applause. The phrase, "from pet to prosecutor," became a headline in national tabloids. Merchandise was soon printed. T-shirts with Mango's face, coffee mugs that read "He heard everything," even plush toys that repeated the infamous lines. Lydia vanished. The once vibrant estate shuttered its gates. Curtains drawn, garden untended, her Range Rover unmoved in weeks. She neither confirmed nor denied anything. No statements, no interviews. Her absence only fueled further speculation. Drone footage even captured someone, perhaps Lydia, moving inside the mansion wearing a hoodie and sunglasses. Eric, the man once in Tokyo, returned with no drama, no press conference, just a swift legal filing. The divorce was finalized quietly, but with one unusual clause that caught the attention of gossip blogs: full custody of Mango was granted to Eric. When pressed by reporters, he declined to elaborate. But the image of Eric leaving court with a simple cage in hand, Mango preening proudly, circulated widely. Some called it poetic, others called it justice. A long-form article was published in The Atlantic, "The Bird That Knew Too Much." It dissected not just the scandal but the phenomenon it sparked, how society treats digital truth, the ethics of privacy, and the randomness of what becomes viral. Mango was hailed as both hero and symptom. And then, the final evolution, Hollywood came calling. A documentary company known for its slick, emotionally manipulative productions announced the acquisition of rights to the story. Working title: Parrot Gate, When Love Gets Repeated. Streaming platforms entered a bidding war. Rumors of A-list actors voicing the parrot in animated reenactments circulated. But beyond the headlines and hashtags, there was something quieter. Mango, who had never asked for fame, sat in his new home, watching the rain streak the windows. Sometimes he spoke, often he didn't. Eric placed the cage beside his reading chair. He'd pause, sip his tea, and simply listen. Because now the world knew what Thomas had known all along. The house had never been silent. It just took a parrot to make everyone hear. When the world turned its back on Lydia Beckford, she did not issue a statement. She didn't upload a Notes app apology or retreat to a wellness retreat in Bali. She simply vanished. Her once glowing social media profiles fell silent. No stories. No posts. No birthday acknowledgements. Rumors whispered that she had moved to Portugal, to a villa near the coast where no one recognized her name or parrot-infused scandal. No one knew for sure. And perhaps, that's exactly how she wanted it. Meanwhile, Mango had a new life. Eric Beckford, whose stoic face had haunted the divorce court photographs, turned out to be a surprisingly tender guardian. He set up a custom perch near the sunniest window of his new townhouse, laid down pine bedding, bought Mango imported birdseed blends, and played classical music in the afternoons. The parrot, who had once been a silent witness to betrayal, was now an adored companion. Eric even set up a small humidifier nearby, mimicking the tropical climate Mango would have once known in the wild. But Mango wasn't just adjusting, he was ascending. A PR agency approached Eric with the idea of turning Mango into a brand. They launched an official Instagram page, @MangothaWhistleblower. The bio read, "He heard everything. And now so will you." The account quickly amassed followers, half amused, half reverent. Photos of Mango posing next to vintage typewriters, sipping bird-safe tea, and wearing tiny felt hats flooded the feed. And then came the live stream. It was meant to be simple, just a 15-minute Q&A with Mango squawking occasionally in the background. But then Mango tilted his head, fluffed his wings, and said it, "Marco. He's gone, baby." The phrase hit the chat like a lightning strike. Comments exploded. The moment was clipped and reshared across all platforms. People called it closure. Others called it genius. The phrase trended again, "He's gone, baby." A cafe in Los Angeles renamed one of their drinks after it, the Marco Latte, with a parrot whisper. It was an oat milk concoction topped with foam art shaped like feathers. Tourists lined up to taste betrayal disguised as froth. Marco, meanwhile, had disappeared entirely. His contract at the gym was terminated. His old profiles, Instagram, LinkedIn, even Venmo, vanished within a week of the scandal breaking. There were theories, of course. Some believed he moved to South America. Others suggested he changed his name and was working as a barista in Boston. But no hard evidence ever surfaced. Eric, for his part, chose not to chase vengeance. Instead, he directed his energy into something meaningful, a national campaign called Digital Infidelity Awareness. It focused on protecting digital privacy in relationships, on recognizing red flags, and, ironically, on the emotional toll of smart devices and surveillance tech. Mango, of course, became the official mascot. At one press conference, Eric was asked why he kept Mango. He looked down at the cage beside him and said, simply, he told the truth when no one else would. Lydia, attempting to salvage what was left of her dignity, filed a lawsuit citing invasion of privacy and emotional distress. But the court dismissed the case. The footage had been captured within a home that legally belonged to Eric, with devices installed for security purposes. Her public downfall was deemed the result of her own actions, and the world's obsession with virality. And so Mango continued, not just as a pet or a symbol, but as a presence. He was invited to a school in Connecticut where students studied ethics and honesty. The principal had read the Atlantic article and believed Mango's story could teach children the lasting power of truth, even when it came feathered. At the closing ceremony of the campaign's first year, Mango sat on a velvet-covered perch beside Eric on stage. The lights were warm, the room full, and just before the final applause, Mango spoke. "Some secrets aren't secrets forever," he said, then paused, "especially when your parrot has a perfect memory." The crowd erupted, because in a world where trust is a currency, sometimes the loudest truth comes from the quietest place. And some birds, they never stop talking.